Welcome back to the JC League House. If you're a first-time viewer, I'm Janie, the owner, and my passion is the restoration of this incredible 1893 Victorian mansion. Be sure and subscribe if you'd like to follow along with this massive undertaking, and check us out on Instagram for quick updates on the progress. Today I want to talk to you about some new information I learned about the garage structure. You may be wondering why I'm filming this intro down at the Lucas Apartments in the carriage house in the dark and in my sunglasses, instead of out in front of the garage itself. That's because I had an unfortunate incident and I have a bad chemical burn in my right eye, so it's a little painful to go out in the breeze and the light right now. I'll address that issue at the end. But for now, if you watched the Garage Folly Parts 1 and 2 videos, you know that when I purchased this house, the garage was in horrible shape and about to fall down. And because of safety issues, deed restrictions on the property, and just my desire to preserve as much of the original character of the house as possible, I kind of veered off course and spent a lot of time and money tearing down and rebuilding the back wall of the garage and repairing the rest of what's here. There was a big question of whether this was the Nicholas Clayton design garage according to the plans I have, or whether, as I suspected based on what I could see from the construction techniques, that it was a one-story flat roof garage that didn't follow those original plans for the property. As you may recall, those clues were the flashing that ran around the top that was consistent with how a flat roof would be constructed, and the definite slope of that flashing to one corner of the garage where there was an opening for a pipe to carry water down to what looked like a catch basin that I suspected drained into the cistern under the house. Thanks to the power of the internet, I was contacted by a gentleman who had purchased a house here in Galveston that was previously owned by one of League-Kempner's descendants. There was a box left in that house with a few items, and one of those was this envelope of old black and white photos. I can't tell you how incredibly excited I was to get these photographs. They don't show a lot of the house, but there's one that very clearly shows the garage. It is, as I suspected, a flat roof one-story building, so not that Clayton design of a two-story garage. Here's a side-by-side of the original versus how it looks today. I think it's pretty cool to see the comparison. Eliza had a lot of grandchildren, and it's fun to see the basketball hoop. I wish I had an exact date of the photos, but here's one of the photos of the kitchen, and that stove looks like something from the early 1970s. The Kempner family sold this house in 1972, so it may be that in these photos they were taken just before it was sold. As a bonus surprise, it also provides an additional bit of information on another question. I'd been trying to figure out when the greenhouse was built. I assumed it was built by Eliza Kempner around 1920 when she did all the other renovations to the house. You may have seen in other videos that I refer a lot to sandboard maps to see how this property transitioned over time. I was confused because the greenhouse that shows up in the 1947 sandboard map is in a different location than this one. The accuracy of that map was questionable, though, because it also doesn't show the large addition that Eliza put on the back of the house. But you can see in the garage photo that there was a greenhouse that shared this back wall of the garage and extended out just as recorded on that 1947 sandboard map. So that original greenhouse is still here in 1970 when I think these photographs were taken. So here is where the greenhouse would have set originally. It came out from the corner of the garage about to the end of where this rubble is, and again I just noticed that the change in the plaster in this wall, and look, here's the outline of where a brick wall probably came out to form the outer wall of that greenhouse. So now I know the Sanborn map was correct, and the original greenhouse sat in this location, and the current greenhouse didn't show up until after 1940 on the Sanborn map, so it is probably a relatively new addition. I was really excited to confirm this greenhouse because I have some plans for this area that will need to be approved by the City Landmark Commission, and to have photographic evidence of what existed originally is going to be really helpful to get that approval. There's still that nagging question as to the validity of the 1947 Sanborn map, And it's possible that the new greenhouse was built at the same time as the addition and it just got missed on the map. Or it could have been added sometime after 1947. I'll have to keep digging on that one. While we're talking about the garage, I want to show you a couple of other curious tidbits. You may have noticed in various pictures that the garage has been used as a place to keep trash and store construction materials. It's just been a mess. It finally got cleaned out enough the other day that I noticed a circular manhole cover and kind of a matching depression on the floor of the garage just a few feet away. When I removed that metal cover, I found this. I'm not really sure what it is, but I had heard that J.C. League was an early collector of automobiles, and I can imagine him using these as pits to drain oil from the cars. If you remember from the excavation video, when we dug that big retention pond, there was a strong petroleum odor and a sheen of oil on the water that's persisted for months. I guess then that a lot of oil had just been disposed of by pouring it on the ground, but now I think it's more likely that the oil went in these pits and then traveled through the sand and leached out in the pond. The guys also cleaned up behind the back of the garage towards the fence. It had been piled with trash and debris and piled up with dirt, and when all that was removed, I found this concrete curb that has metal bolts sticking up that would have held a wooden sole plate for a wall. There was plumbing that went up the outside of the garage. I thought it went to the second story before I decided the garage was one story, but now I think that's a vent stack. What I can see now is this little area was probably a small bathroom on the ground floor. It probably had a sink and a toilet for the guys to clean up while working on the cars. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but I think this area might make a neat place to add a fountain, since I plan to use the garage kind of as an outdoor entertaining space. While we're on garages, let's do a little more archaeological sleuthing. As I mentioned before, J.C. League was an early adopter of the automobile, and he was quite the collector apparently. To house all of his cars, there was actually a second 3-car garage on the property made out of wood. I know it was wood because it's color-coded yellow on the Sanborn map. I had never given it much thought other than noticing it on the map along with 2 other small outbuildings. And then there was this.
And see.
Okay. I just brought my sister out here to show her my beautiful sunflower that came up on its own, and it started blooming right when the conflict in the Ukraine started. So I've been loving it, and as I was pointing it out to her, I noticed for the first time, and again, it's just amazing to me that I've studied this house so intently for so long, and I see new things, but I just looked up and noticed in this fence these slots. And if you notice, this fence is a little different. It's been plastered over right here in this one small section. And in the Sanborn maps, there was a garage back here at one time. And I think that those might actually be where ceiling joists were forming the top of the garage. It was just built into the wall because it starts at this end and goes over there.
I dug the map back out and looked at the spacing from the rear property line wall and saw that the garage actually abuts the west property line. I'm convinced now that they just used that wall to build one side of the garage, and this was the site of that original garage.
So let me tell you about my eye. My sister-in-law treated me to this wonderful mini vacation in Galveston. No work, just bumming around and having fun like regular tourists. We stopped for lunch at Maceo Spice and Import Company, which is a great place to try if you're ever in Galveston. And after I placed our order, I noticed this giant commercial bottle of hand sanitizer sitting there. So I thought I'd be good and sanitize my hands, but when I pushed on the pump, the nozzle was clogged. So I pushed really hard, which made the clog shoot out, and followed by this giant stream of hand sanitizer, like it was coming out of a water cannon. But instead of going down in my hand, it shot up straight into my right eye before I could blink or do anything. I could see it coming. The force it hit with blew that hand sanitizer up under my eyelid, and I had this giant glob hanging on my face. The pain was off the charts, and once my brain realized what happened, I started screaming for water. I had my head down. I couldn't see. The poor young guy behind the counter didn't know what to do, so he set a bottle of water in front of me, which I couldn't see it because I couldn't get my eyes open. And fortunately, there were a couple of nurses standing next to me who had just placed their order, and one of them had gotten a glass of ice water. So she put it down in front of me and put my hands on it and said, here, water, water. And so I'm trying to rinse my eye out with crushed ice, which I can't say is the best thing to do, but it sure beat the heck out of the alternative, which was leaving that glob of hand sanitizer in my eye. The area around my eye turned black and swelled up. My eyeball was really red. And for some reason, like every bad thing that happens to me, I found it hysterically funny, and so did my sister-in-law.
I'm going to the urgent care again for my eyeball. Have a relaxing vacation at the 61st Street Urgent Care. I have an urgent care. They know me. Last thing I see before I go blind.
It entertained us for the rest of the trip. And I don't mean to make light of eye injuries. I'm very safety conscious. I must own 40 pairs of safety glasses. My husband gave me 24 pairs for Christmas. But mine are always in situations where you wouldn't be wearing eye protection, like in a restaurant using hand sanitizer. My eyes better now. Fortunately, eyes heal quickly and it should be back to normal in 2 or 3 days. But my kids have suggested that I put safety glasses on before I get out of bed in the morning and take them off when I get back in bed, because I just have this just unfortunate track record of doing odd things to my eyes. But all's well that ends well. The internet has been an amazing tool to collect information about this house. I'm so thankful that the gentleman who found those photos took the time to reach out and get them to me. There's more to that story, but I'll save that for later videos and Instagram posts. So if you haven't already, like and subscribe so you can follow along with the restoration of this incredible house and this important piece of Galveston history. The League-Kempner house is now owned by a nonprofit dedicated to restoring it to its original beauty. Check out our website, League-Kempnerhouse.org, where you can donate, volunteer your time, or stay updated on special events and tours. Just watching these videos helps us with our mission, so thanks for being here on YouTube with us, and check out our Facebook and Instagram pages. See you next time here on sunny Galveston Island.